Let's talk crochet. Hey folks, it's Mary, aka MercyTriumphs, and this is Slow Crochet. This is episode 080, and today I am talking about all the things that I have been crocheting this week. Now, in my family this week, I have had a little bit more downtime than usual. My children were away on different adventures, and so I was able to breathe just a little bit, and so that allowed me to get a few things done, maybe some new projects going. So let me start by picking up with the things that I had going on last week. Number one, I had a hat that was nearly done and I finished it. No surprise there, but I just did want to show that I finished the hat. It's very soft. This is copper corgi fibers. Actually, when I picked this up, it was like someone's abandoned work in progress that they had donated. And so I just love that I was able to rescue that and turn it into a wonderful hat. This is my corner to corner hat. I didn't have quite enough of the yarn to do a full 8-row repeat, and I just did a little bit of the ribbing, but I still think it's quite effective, and I love how it turned out. So this is going to go onto my stash of hats for the time being. I asked you guys to identify, it almost looked like one of those foam makeup smudgy things is. I don't know, I don't wear makeup, so I'm not in on the thing. Anyway, I had this piece and I said, what do you think it is? Some of y'all guessed that I was making a mouse for Miss Helen over at the Mousy Makes podcast, her mouse along. And so this is Duncan. And Duncan the mouse is stuffed with yarn scraps, and he's made out of Lion brand fisherman's wool. And then I kept trying to think, should he have a cape? Should he have a hat? Should he have a cloak? Should he have a vest? I tried some different ideas there. Nothing really was working for me. And finally, I just decided that he needed like a little crossbody bag. And inside, he has a very old penny. And it comes from, I think 1960 something or maybe 70 something. Anyway, little penny in the pouch, because apparently in around the 1980s they stopped making solid copper pennies, and I thought this would be a good treasure for a mouse to have, for Duncan to have. So if you go on my Instagram, you might have a little bit more information about Duncan, a little bit of his story. But as of right now, I do like how he turned out. I think he's really sweet. I love that he's a little brown mouse, because that's more of what we have in this area. I don't really see a lot of gray mice. I see the brown ones running around. Well, to be fair, some of the neighborhood cats keep some of them from running around, but I do imagine that some little mice and little critters live in our blackberry brambles. So that's where I imagine he would kind of live and make his home there, maybe with some of the turtles or the rabbits or things like that. His eyes are some little black beads, and his nose is some coordinating embroidery thread to kind of go with his pouch. So that is my submission to Miss Helen over at the Mousy Makes podcast. I did indeed make a mouse, and he kind of can match along with Cuthbert here. Not quite to scale, but they can kind of be together. I think they'll be good friends. Last week, I had just barely started working on a sweater using the alpaca twist from Hobby Lobby's most recent clearance, the Yarn Bee alpaca twist yarn. Last week, I was not very far on the sweater, and now here's where I'm at. You can see here where I joined in my second ball of yarn. So this will be a back panel. I'll scoot back a little bit. And so this will be kind of up along the shoulder. It'll hit a little bit below the hip, I think. And yeah, I think it's going to be nice and cozy. I don't think I'll have to go much further with this ball of yarn. And then I'll be able to pick up the front panels and then the sleeves. This one is going kind of slowly just because I am kind of going in a different rhythm than I normally would when I'm crocheting. It has almost a similar rhythm to me as when I'm doing Tunisian crochet, where like every stitch has to be a little bit thoughtful and the rhythms are a little bit different. But I really like that. I'm using my vintage K made in the USA hook. So it should be around a 6.5 millimeter hook. Really love how this is coming together so far, and looking forward to continuing to work on this. I do have 7 of these, and they're all from 2 different dye lots. So you can't really tell much of a difference, but I am going to be alternating between the 2 different dye lots as I go along. It does have a real nice kind of fluff to it. And it also, actually, that. Maybe I'm a bit closer than I thought. I need to look at that pattern again and just double check some measurements there. But neither here nor there. Loving how it's coming together, and I'm excited to continue working on that in the near future. Last thing that I want to follow up on from last week was this alpaca scarf that I did finish. The question is, did I block it or not? And I just wanted to thank everyone who left a comment. You guys have so much wisdom, and the benefit of having a comment section with lots of wisdom is that there's so many great perspectives there and wonderful things to consider. The downside was I'm still no closer to deciding whether or not to block this, just because I saw the goodness in each perspective. Different people had really thoughtful opinions both ways. So right now this scarf is not blocked. I've just kind of had it laid out, just kind of had it folded nicely. At this point, I'm leaning towards not blocking it just because I think I'm going to see this friend sometime this week and I'd like to go ahead and give it away. And you know, you still can see the stitches laid out. Maybe it's a design where blocking won't really make a huge difference in the wearability of it versus like a triangle shawl where it drapes naturally and it's going to kind of flow out. And so you want it to kind of be opened up because it has like a greater surface area. In this case, because it's a scarf, naturally it is going to kind of bunch up in on itself anyway and wrap around. So maybe blocking isn't quite necessary for this. The other thing is, just on a practicality standpoint, I kind of missed my window of opportunity to block it just based on space and traffic throughout the house. There's not a lot of places where I could lay out my blocking boards to be over 6 feet long and let that have the time that it needed to properly block. So that's also just a practicality thing. But again, I did just want to circle back around and thank everyone for your real thoughtful responses. I love in the comments where you challenged me to think about things in new ways and where I can learn from your expertise in this craft as I continue to learn and grow in it. So thank you so much for being so generous with your wisdom there. There's one other work in progress that I've had going on and I haven't worked on it much lately, but I thought, okay, I really do want to put some effort into it. And that is just this little scarflet idea here. I put a stitch marker to show where it was the last time I showed it off. This is just using two kind of thinner yarns and I'm carrying them in between rows of single crochet and linked trebles. And I'm doing kind of some bobble stitches in there. The thought is to make a cute little kind of neckerchief. So I need to get it a little bit longer so it'll be able to be tied up. So maybe 6 more inches before I start decreasing back down. But this is one of those things where I had an idea and I didn't see a pattern for it. So I'm kind of coming up with it on the go. The only challenging thing here is kind of deciding where to place my bobble stitches. I'm not trying to get them too thickly in there, and in some ways this is also just a practice in carrying the yarn in different ways so that it's not that visible. Although I think I am going to just keep the floats here because I don't think those are that bad. I think they add a little bit of texture and a little bit of character there. So anyway, that's a work in progress and I hope to be making more progress on that so that can kind of come to conclusion. Maybe I'll even consider doing a tutorial on this. Initially, the thought was to do kind of a prototype and then make this again in a different yarn that I really want to feature. But yeah, we'll see. I'm still kind of playing with that idea, but I am going to try to give it a little bit more attention this week. A lot of my time this week was actually spent on a small, bigger project, but I'll let Mary of the past tell you about that. Hello, people of the future. This is Mary of the past. I wanted to briefly show you one of the things that I spent quite a long time making this week, and that is something I'm quite proud of, but it's also already so very well beloved that, yeah, just off camera where you can't see, the actual owner of this item is waiting and watching, making sure that I treat this little guy with complete respect. Well, the little guy is Toad. And Toad has in his hands a frying pan. Now originally there is a Toad pattern that I followed. It involved quite a bit of sewing and I think the original pattern was in German, so there was a little bit of fudging going on. But after I presented Toad to his new owner, that said child said Toad needs a frying pan. So that child then proceeded to make a prototype frying pan out of paper and tape. And so then I got my black yarn, and I was able to make a frying pan for Toad, because apparently in the most recent Mario movie, Toad does have a frying pan as a weapon. And so he always carries it in a particular hand, as I was told. So here we have our sweet Toad. So Toad has quickly become one of the favorite toys of this child. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I will just say pretty much how this guy was constructed was from the bottom up. And then the feet were made separately, the hands were made separately, and the little circles on the hat were made separately, and all those were sewn on. And then we made the vest separately. In terms of the frying pan, that was just a design that I came up with on my own. He is made 100% of acrylic. The black and the white are Red Heart Super Saver. The rest comes from the Hobby Lobby little minis that I got recently. And then the hook size that I used was a size G, a 4.5 millimeter hook. And that really helped me get along with this pattern. So glad that I have him done. Oh, he is stuffed with fiberfill, not with yarn scraps, because I thought he might be so well loved that he might have to go through the wash a little bit. And then I used just black embroidery thread for his face. So originally, the thought of doing Toad came about when Cassandra over at Craftably Ever After was asking for submitted designs. And so I had decided that since Mushroom Cat was going to be made up, and then I also made Wojtek the bear, that the other child who submitted a design, I could make that up for that child as well. And at that point, the child said, no, would you make Toad instead? So this was kind of our compromise. This guy took me quite a few hours, and so I'm really glad to have him done. And this is kind of one of the reasons that I want to take a break from amigurumi just a little bit, because I have been doing so much of it recently. So that is what I have in terms of my Toad here. I'm going to take you back to the present. I'll see you then. Welcome back to the present. It is so gratifying to have a child love the thing that you made for them so much that they are anxiously waiting, just cannot let it out of their sight. With Toad done, there's other things that I would really like to work on instead. I have shawls, I have sweaters, I have hats, I have little projects. And the thing with amigurumi, as wonderful as it is, it tends to either be something for a child to love, which is fine, or it just kind of tends to live here among the yarniness. And a big part of my heart is to make sure that what I'm making actually goes forth and kind of has a function. Not that everything has to be functional, but I do want to be cognizant about the space that I'm using. And so if I'm going to make something, I either want it to be functional as well as beautiful, or I want to be able to donate it or something of that nature. I just don't want infinite stuff to sit around. To me, that's not really where my heart is. So even right now, thinking of all these amigurumi, there's a lot of joy in them, but I also think, I wonder how long they're going to stay with me, because couldn't they go somewhere else where someone else could enjoy them equally more? It's the dance that we do, right? Of creating things and keeping them or letting them go from us. So that's part of that inner dialogue as well with amigurumi, is essentially I'm making something to kind of hang out with me. The other side of it is that it does take concentration. And y'all know me, I like things where I can kind of go on autopilot a little bit. I need to have a few projects that I have to concentrate on, but ultimately this needs to be a recharging, flowing, almost like a dance. Dancing can be really athletic. You can do your dance classes and get your heart rate up, and all that is great. But then you also just want the dance to flow and to be enjoyed and to kind of help you unwind as well. And so I want crochet to have that same feeling to me and that same function in my life as a release, not just a concentration, learn the project, work really hard to make sure I'm not skipping stitches, all that kind of stuff. I like to have those flows that I can get into. And yeah, amigurumi just isn't a flowy kind of thing for me. So with that said, I did start some new projects. One of them is actually a hat that I've completely frogged and redone a couple of times now. This was one of those times where you just see something in your stash and you just grab it and you just do the thing. I had some Noro Miyabi, and this is 65% wool and 35% cashmere. It's about 100 grams and about 250 meters, and it's classified as a 4-weight. This is a yarn that I picked up a while ago from Little Knits. And it was at a season of life where I thought, let me just get the fancy fibers, sight unseen, untouched, all that kind of stuff. And my initial thought was I would love to use this particular hank to make a knitted hat. I was going to learn to knit in the round. Well, this hank has just been sitting there languishing, and I have not really gotten much more interested in learning to knit. In fact, I've been more interested in maybe doing like Tunisian crochet in the round before going into knitting. So I just kind of went for it. I grabbed the hank of yarn, I caked it up, and I said, hey, let me do a granny square style beret. And you can see it's a little bit roughly even here, but I'll drop in a couple of pictures of what it looked like initially. Initially, I was using a Yarnspirations pattern, and because I was using a smaller size hook, kind of matching the hook to the yarn itself, I was using a size H hook, a 5mm hook, which is smaller than I think what the pattern called for. I thought, you know, I'll add a little bit extra, I'll just make it a little bit bigger, and I had it mostly done and did not like it. So I went and I found another similar beret pattern by Little John's Yarn. So I frogged back to about where I could pick up with her. And even then, as I was going with her pattern, it was getting really ruffly. So at this point, I'm kind of winging it, just trying to smooth out some of these ruffles. And hopefully I will get this done in the next little bit. This is going to be just a simple project that I can have. Even though it's summer, I still have sports practices to attend, and so this is something handy that can hang out with me and I can work on it while sports practices are going on, and I'm working with the other family members that are not practicing at the moment. So a little bit of a project there. The other thing that I started is another kind of experiment, and this was me attempting to take two different patterns and put them together, and I think I realized what I'm going to do now. So here's what I have. And you can kind of see the issue here. This was meant to be a triangle shawl and more of an obtuse triangle shawl. I didn't want a really striking right triangle. And look how beautiful that is. Look at the texture there. The design of this texture comes from Moogly, and it was for a rectangle wrap. And so I thought, okay, I don't want to do a rectangle wrap. That's not my jam. So I was looking around and I saw a very basic triangle shawl, just a right triangle shawl of that kind of background mesh pattern. And that one was by Lion Brand. So I thought, why don't I try to put the two together, but make it an obtuse triangle? So I started out doing a chain and doing the kind of chain one, skip one, double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet mesh. So it is giving me a very awkward shape. It's more of a diamond shape than anything. And so that's not going to work for me. I was thinking about maybe cinching it up here to try to straighten out that top edge, but that's not going to work either. That would still just give it an awkward point at the top where your neck is. So here's what I'm going to do instead. This is an idea that I do want to continue working on, but I think rather than continue with this skein, I'm just going to set this whole thing aside. And at some point when I'm ready, I will pick it up again using a fresh skein of yarn, and I will do more of that traditional right triangle and see if I can make that work. So this has been a really good experience in getting this pattern to work in more of a triangle shape. It's been a lot of trial and error. So I think what I'm going to do is, just restart the whole thing. The yarn that I'm using is actually Mainstays cotton yarn, and this was the colorway Brown Stone. So this is Walmart's cotton, and I just happened to see it one day on the shelf, and there were like maybe 4 skeins of it. So I grabbed 2. I went to check out and it came up that they were ringing up at 75 cents a piece. So I ran back and got the other 4 or the other 2. And this is a wonderful cotton. I think it is out of production now. I haven't been able to find it ever since. I don't know how it ended up at my Walmart, and I have not seen it since, but it is wonderful. It's really comparable to I Love This Cotton. And I think the colorway is really beautiful. It's this kind of sandy color, kind of a weathered wood color. So eventually I think I will come back to this one. I'll eventually cake up the rest of this and use it. But as of right now, I'll kind of keep it out as a point of reference to make sure that I'm not making the same mistakes twice. For this, I'm using a size I crochet hook of 5.5 millimeter, and I do like how that's coming out. I could go up a hook size if I wanted it a little bit drapier, but then again, you know, it is kind of nice just as is. So I will think on that. I am really loving using this hook size, and the yarn itself calls for a 5 millimeter hook. So I am kind of up a little bit on that regard. So we'll see, we'll see. Watch this space, we'll see what happens. My family has all come back together, and so now summer is in full swing. So we shall see how much crochet time I actually have. We'll see what progress I make in the future. But anyway, that's all I have for right now for this week. Y'all, I hope that you're having a wonderful week. I hope that you're having a wonderful summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or a wonderful winter if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. I hope you're enjoying getting nice and toasty and cozy in your crochets and knits and all that kind of wonderful stuff. When it gets blazing hot here, I will think of you and wish warm wishes in your direction. Thank you to all of my subscribers. Thank you to y'all who are new folks that have come along here with me. Thank you to everyone who has liked and shared and commented and subscribed and all that kind of YouTube-y stuff. That's always super encouraging. Love hearing from y'all. Love being a part of your lives. Y'all bring me so much joy, and it's such a pleasure and an honor to be part of your life. And if I'm not your cup of tea, thank you so much for listening this long. I do appreciate you, and I do hope I'll see you again soon. Bye.